It's 5:02 and welcome into a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We start off this morning with Hurricane Erin. We have been tracking it throughout the week right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. The latest details out just minutes ago from the National Hurricane Center out of Miami, Florida, continues to show Erin as a now weaker end Category 2 hurricane. Its maximum sustained winds 105 miles an hour. The pressure sitting at 945 millibars. The biggest news out this morning is that the track and the storm is now officially moving east. As of this 5 a.m. advisory, it is moving north-northeast at 17 miles an hour, beginning its trek away from the east coast of the United States. Tracking some of those details this morning, and the storm is in fact expected to stay in the Atlantic Ocean, not landfalling anywhere on the continental United States or Bermuda, and it's making its closest pass to our coastline this morning, bringing strong and dangerous rip current, storm surge, beach erosion, and flooding at two beaches across the east coast of our state. The biggest impacts being felt in the Outer Banks, where a tropical storm warning does remain in effect for the Outer Banks throughout the rest of the day today, with Erin currently being about 200 miles off the coast of the Outer Banks. It is now moving northeastward. However, the storm is an estimated 800 miles wide, bringing some of those coastal tropical bands to the Outer Banks this morning. The weather is expected to deteriorate at least slightly in the morning hours as it will improve throughout the day today. Well, yesterday, Governor Josh Stein held a press conference at the Emergency Operations Center in Raleigh, providing information to residents across the state of North Carolina. This is what the governor had to say about, well, the state of emergency.
Yesterday, I declared a state of emergency across North Carolina to facilitate our emergency response and to keep you safe. This statewide state of emergency enables us to send critical resources from across the state and around the country to respond. We've activated a cross-agency storm response that includes the Department of Public Safety, the Department of Transportation, the North Carolina National Guard, the State Highway Patrol, and many local partners. Our state emergency response team stands ready to quickly and decisively respond to any needs along the coast. We have already pre-positioned 3 swiftwater rescue teams and 200 National Guard troops to various locations on the coast, along with boats, high-clearance vehicles, and aircraft.
Preparation being done by the state of North Carolina in preparation of this storm. The coastal impacts are expected to be the most severe, according to Governor Stein.
Folks on the coast need to take care. Based on the current forecast, we are anticipating coastal flooding from massive waves, tropical storm force winds, and tidal and storm surge for much of the state shoreline, especially the Outer Banks, from this evening through Thursday. Life-threatening rip currents for most of the week. No one should be in the ocean. And extensive beach erosion along much of the coast.
That is already beginning to take effect this morning. High tide is expected across the vast majority of the eastern half of our state in the 6 a.m. hour this morning. High tide alongside some of these high waves from Hurricane Erin are expected to continue to cause some of that beach erosion that is already been having and causing some problems across the eastern half of our state. That high tide will likely cause that water to continue to push further inland, causing areas specifically out in the Outer Banks to become swelled with water during that high tide period, again around 6:30 or so this morning. And while Hurricane Erin is not making an immediate landfall throughout North Carolina or again anywhere on the East Coast, we are in the thick now in the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. The governor providing some information, tips, and things for people across the state to make sure they have available and ready to go, not only for Erin, but for future storms as we continue to trek through the hurricane season.
First, stay informed. Follow reputable sources of information like the National Weather Service and local media so you know the latest about the storm risks. I strongly encourage you to register online right now for emergency text and phone alerts from your county emergency management agency. Second, get your disaster kit ready. Think about what you would need after a major storm. Things like enough food, water, and supplies for 3 to 5 days for each person and pet in your household, a flashlight and fresh batteries, a battery-operated radio. Next, have a plan. In case you have to evacuate, build a go bag of cash, prescriptions, phone chargers, and important documents like insurance policies and other personal and financial records. Take photos of whatever you own that is valuable in case it gets destroyed. Know your evacuation plan and how to connect with your family after the storm. Write down their phone numbers on a piece of paper if you have not memorized them. Visit knowyourzone.nc.gov for more information. And finally, do not drive through flood waters. Too many people have died driving into flooded roadways. Don't do it. You do not know how deep the water is or how fast it is running. So please, don't drown, turn around. We do not want you to become a casualty of Hurricane Erin. With ocean overwash, we anticipate impacts to our roadways, especially NC Highway 12. For the most up-to-date roadway information, visit drivenc.gov. For more information about the storm, preparations, evacuation orders, open shelters, or other important tips, visit readync.gov/Erin.
That's Governor Josh Stein at the Emergency Operations Center in Raleigh yesterday, talking about the state of emergency that is currently in effect across North Carolina due to Hurricane Erin. Some new details and data just coming in this morning. Erin now 200 miles away from Cape Hatteras. It is now moving east, so away from the North Carolina coastline. Maximum wind gusts between 40 and 45 miles an hour in that area, and some buoys are already reporting wave heights as high as 18 feet just off the coast of the Outer Banks this morning. So that is, of course, why some of those state of emergencies are in effect and why a tropical storm warning and some mandatory evacuations were and continue to be in place for coastal regions in the northeast sector of our state. Will Ray, the head of North Carolina Emergency Management, did join Governor Stein yesterday at the press conference in Raleigh. This is what he had to say from an EOC standpoint.
Extremely large, dangerous waves forecasted around 20 feet in height, along with storm surge of 2 to 4 feet on top of the surf, will likely impact the dunes along portions of the North Carolina coast, especially east and southeast facing beaches and the Outer Banks. Numerous roadways will likely become impassable, especially on Highway 12, as the governor mentioned, and in communities on the barrier islands. This will be a longer duration event, with coastal flooding expected over several high tide cycles. We will see rain bands trailing Erin that will also impact the area, already saturated soils across the area, which could lead to extended impacts. Please be sure to have multiple ways to receive weather alerts, especially during the overnight hours. You need to be informed by receiving information from reputable sources of information and have a plan to protect yourself and your family. Hurricane Erin is already creating extremely dangerous and life-threatening rip currents for all of the North Carolina coast that will linger through the week. We've seen a high number of rescues along the coast, and you should avoid swimming anywhere on the North Carolina coast right now.
And as you heard from Will Ray discussing some of the overwash, Highway 12 in certain areas is already closed. Folks with the North Carolina, both the Department of Transportation and local officials have closed portions of Highway 12 due to some of that overwash beginning to take effect. Portions of Highway 12 closing around 7 o'clock last night, and those will remain closed until the storm, as the storm continues to move away from our coast and the surf begins to move out of the area. A lot of resources already being deployed across the state of North Carolina. Will Ray talked about that as well.
Yesterday, North Carolina Emergency Management deployed 3 of our state's swiftwater rescue teams from partners in the North Carolina Marine Patrol, North Carolina Wildlife Resources, and a joint team made up of the Wake Forest Fire Department and Knightdale Fire Department, as well as 3 of our state's search and rescue task forces from Buncombe County, the Charlotte Fire Department, and the Greensboro Fire Department, all of which have water rescue, structural collapse, and wide area search capabilities. These search and rescue assets are positioned in eastern North Carolina to quickly respond to assist first responders and local emergency managers with response needs. We've activated approximately 200 North Carolina National Guardsmen with high clearance vehicles and positioned them across the coastal plain to support quick response into those impacted communities. Aircraft have been placed on standby from the North Carolina National Guard and the State Highway Patrol to support rescue needs as well as movement of commodities, teams, or equipment.
So as you heard there from Will Ray and from Governor Josh Stein, a lot of preparation work already has now concluded across the state. That state of emergency order going into effect late in the day on Tuesday. This press briefing taking place yesterday morning over at the Emergency Operations Center in Raleigh. If you're just waking up and joining us this morning, the latest out of Hurricane Erin, the storm now currently 205 miles off the coast of Cape Hatteras in North Carolina. The good news to pass along, that eastward movement for the storm has officially begun. It's now moving north-northeast at 17 miles an hour as it does begin to weaken. It is still a Category 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds at 105 miles an hour. Some of the coastal rain bands in this massive storm, which is expected and predicted now to be close to 800 miles wide, is affecting portions of the Outer Banks this morning. Not only are you dealing with some of the high tides, some of the ocean swells, 18, 20-foot waves causing some overwash, but some heavy rain expected through the early morning hours in the Outer Banks. We'll continue to keep an eye on all of those details throughout the rest of the show here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. You can read some additional details from that emergency operation press briefing yesterday, including Governor Josh Stein and Will Ray, the head of emergency management. We've got an article and some quotes this morning up on our website, carolinajournal.com. The headline story there: Stein holds press briefing on preparing for Hurricane Erin. It's now 5:14 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll get a look at the roadways across the Charlotte Metro this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Good Thursday.
It's 5:21. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Good Thursday morning to you. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. More than 20,000 voter registration records for people in North Carolina have been fixed under the North Carolina State Board of Elections registration repair project that was announced and began its rollout about a month ago. However, election officials are now in the process of mailing the remaining 82,000 plus individuals whose records still need updating. Back on July 17th, the state board kicked off a major initiative with the project to collect missing identification numbers for roughly 103,000 registered voters whose records lacked the required information. The project aims to bring the state's voter rolls into compliance with both federal and state laws, recent court rulings, as well as ongoing lawsuits with the United States Department of Justice. The board unanimously approved the three-part plan, which again started back on July the 17th. However, they approved it at their June 24th meeting unanimously. And I will note that the current State Board of Elections is made up of 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats, so bipartisan nature working there. As part of the project, voters receiving the mailings will be asked to provide either their driver's license number or the last 4 digits of their Social Security number, as their records lack one or both of those pieces of information, which are required by both state and federal law. Looking at the federal side this morning, under the Federal Help America Vote Act, also known as HAVA, you've heard us talk about that pretty frequently around this issue over the last couple of months. It took effect all the way back in 2004. All voter registrations across the United States must include either a driver's license number or the last 4 digits of a Social Security number. However, for nearly a decade under Democrat control, North Carolina's voter registration form lacked clear instructions, resulting in tens of thousands of registrations being submitted without that required information. The new mailings encourage recipients to provide their identification numbers in one of the following ways: by mail, which would be filling out the form at the bottom of the letter being sent out by the State Board of Elections, signing it and mailing it back to the State Board in an enclosed pre-addressed returned envelope with postage already being provided free of charge from the state of North Carolina. Probably the most convenient for the vast majority of folks across our state is the online option. An individual with a North Carolina driver's license or a DMV ID card, that is a non-driver's license state-issued ID, can submit an updated voter registration form through the Department of Motor Vehicles' secure website. This is the same website that many folks use to pay their vehicle property taxes as well as deal with their registration. You have logged into the MyDMV website before. It's that exact same website. There is no fee for that service, and you can update that information, provide that completely for free and within just minutes directly on the DMV's website. And finally, the third option, in person. An individual can also visit their county board of elections, so the county in which you are registered. Head on over to that office and provide the required information. However, that cannot be updated via phone. You do have to show up in person to make that change happen. Sam Hayes, the executive director of the state board, said it's quick, it's easy, it's free. We strongly encourage all voters on the registration repair list to take action now and avoid any issues next time they show up to vote. Voters across the state can also search whether they are on the list or not via a link that we've got up on our website, carolinajournal.com. The article on our site has a link to the registration repair search tool, which is updated every single day by the state board, where you can view whether your registration is already up to date or not. Election officials note that if a voter receives a letter but has already gone through the process of repairing their registration both online or in person and no longer appears on the list, they do not have to take any additional action. Since the launch of the registration repair project, the registrations of more than 20,000 voters have been fixed through a combination of research by County Board of Elections and a response of individual voters to update their voter registration records. Now, this is very important to note for folks that are on this list and do not handle their voter registration through one of the three avenues that we talked about this morning. In future elections, in-person voters who have still not provided that required information to either their local county board of election or the state board of election will be required to vote with a provisional ballot. And the only way in which that provisional ballot will be allowed to go through and your votes to count is if you provide that information, either a driver's license, full driver's license number, or last four of the social security number when you vote. Currently, the state board is creating a flag to appear on these voters' records in either an electronic or paper poll book that are used at voting sites to alert poll workers and those working on local elections that these voters must vote provisionally and provide that missing information for their ballot to count. County Board of Elections will also train poll workers accordingly to make sure that that process goes as smooth as possible. This has been a long-time issue for the State Board of Elections. There have been a couple of different lawsuits going back a few years at dealing with this. You've had concerned citizens, concerns of voters across the state of North Carolina that had continually brought this concern to the State Board of Election over the last couple of years about how this information, it was not immediately clear on the voter application form whether that information was required or not. However, with the State Board of Election changing political party leadership earlier this year after the General Assembly passed legislation moving the State Board of Election Appointment Authority, one of the additional seats, away from Governor Josh Stein and to State Auditor Dave Bolek, who is a Republican. That board now has a 3-2 Republican to Democrat majority. And one of the first things that Republican board members dealt with when taking control of that board was dealing with this ongoing problem, dealing with these voter registrations. You can read some additional details, including checking out that registration repair search tool to see if your name is listed by visiting our website this morning, carolinajournal.com. The story, headline, I should say, State Election Board corrects over 20,000 records, seeks more ID numbers. Again, you can read that over on our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:29, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll get another look at the roadways on your early Thursday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Thank you, Nick. We're looking very hot.
It's 5:35. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT, recapping and talking about Hurricane Erin this morning. The latest information out from the National Hurricane Center less than 30 minutes or so ago continues to show Erin churning through the Atlantic this morning, a Category 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds at 105 miles an hour. The big update this morning, for the first time, the storm is now moving east, north-northeast at 17 miles an hour as it is making its closest pass to the North Carolina coast as we speak this morning, and as some of the folks in the Outer Banks deal with some of those impacts. It is a massive storm. It's currently 200 miles away from Cape Hatteras. However, the storm is an estimated 800 miles wide, with the coast already seeing some of those coastal rain bands this morning. Erin is now slowly pulling away from the coast as it will continue its northeastward journey. And so while conditions are expected to be the worst throughout the morning hours today, especially during high tide, which is coming up here in about an hour or so, the coast will continue to see improvements throughout the middle of the day. Maximum wind gusts being reported this morning in Cape Hatteras are between 40 and 45 miles an hour, and maximum wave heights coming in from some buoys just off the Carolina coast is already 18 feet. And you've heard from officials over the last couple of days the risk of some 20-foot waves. Well, that is part of the reason why those tropical storm watches and warnings were in effect. Some of the mandatory evacuations as portions of Highway 12 were closed last night, according to the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicle. DriveNC.gov shows that portions of Highway 12 closed around 7 p.m. last night, and that will remain closed until the water recedes and it is safe for drivers. And obviously crews have to assess, make sure the road is still intact, but once the water recedes and crews are able to assess any damage there, they will get that reopened and folks will begin their ability to travel freely on Highway 12. Looking at the power outages this morning, not really a whole lot to report. Carteret County reporting about 500 customers without power. It's not immediately clear whether that is due to Hurricane Erin or some other sort of event causing a power outage. Statewide, only 826 customers without power, the vast majority of those throughout the Outer Banks. No major power outage issues this morning. Governor Josh Stein holding a press conference yesterday at the Emergency Operations Center in Raleigh, talking about the state of emergency that he declared earlier this week.
Yesterday, I declared a state of emergency across North Carolina to facilitate our emergency response and to keep you safe. This statewide state of emergency enables us to send critical resources from across the state and around the country to respond. We've activated a cross-agency storm response that includes the Department of Public Safety, the Department of Transportation, the North Carolina National Guard, the State Highway Patrol, and many local partners. Our state emergency response team stands ready to quickly and decisively respond to any needs along the coast. We have already pre-positioned 3 swiftwater rescue teams and 200 National Guard troops to various locations on the coast, along with boats, high-clearance vehicles, and aircraft.
That's Governor Josh Stein yesterday morning. He also talked about the impacts, which again are predominantly being felt across the coast and more accurately, the Outer Banks area of our state.
Folks on the coast need to take care. Based on the current forecast, we are anticipating coastal flooding from massive waves, tropical storm force winds, and tidal and storm surge for much of the state shoreline, especially the Outer Banks from this evening through Thursday. Life-threatening rip currents for most of the week. No one should be in the ocean. And extensive beach erosion along much of the coast.
A lot of that already taking place this morning. That's Governor Josh Stein. Will Ray, the head of North Carolina Emergency Management, also talked about some of the resources that they have deployed and have ready as Erin made her impacts closer to North Carolina yesterday.
Yesterday, North Carolina Emergency Management deployed 3 of our state's swiftwater rescue teams from partners in the North Carolina Marine Patrol, North Carolina Wildlife Resources, and a joint team made up of the Wake Forest Fire Department and Knightdale Fire Department, as well as 3 of our state's search and rescue task forces from Buncombe County, the Charlotte Fire Department, and the Greensboro Fire Department, all of which have water rescue, structural collapse, and wide area search capabilities. These search and rescue assets are positioned in eastern North Carolina to quickly respond to assist first responders and local emergency managers with response needs. We've activated approximately 200 North Carolina National Guardsmen with high clearance vehicles and positioned them across the coastal plain to support quick response into those impacted communities. Aircraft have been placed on standby from the North Carolina National Guard and the State Highway Patrol to support rescue needs as well as movement of commodities, teams, or equipment.
With the North Carolina Emergency Management providing that update and providing that information. We've got a full rundown of that press conference yesterday in Raleigh over on our website this morning, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 541, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. The ever-popular social media app TikTok has been in the news a lot over the last couple of years. Concerns over its ownership coming in directly out of the Chinese government. Should it be banned, not banned across the United States? That's been an ongoing conversation. However, there is an interesting legal challenge going on here in the state of North Carolina that could have some impacts for folks across our state. To get an update on that, Mitch Kokai of the John Locke Foundation joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Mitch, the lawsuit we're talking about this morning actually goes back a couple of years to when Josh Stein was in the Attorney General's office. What's going on there?
It does. And this is separate from the idea of banning TikTok. That, of course, is something that's happening on the national level. But in North Carolina, the lawsuit that was filed by then Attorney General, now Governor Josh Stein, didn't ask to ban TikTok, but it said that TikTok and its corporate parent ByteDance are responsible for violating a state law by designing their application in such a way that it addicts young people, that the algorithms and everything else that's in the design is designed so that a kid signs up for TikTok and then will get addicted to it and can't get off the screen because they're going to keep seeing videos that they like. And so this is something that the Stein State Justice Department went to court over, saying, look, this is something that violates the Unfair and Deceptive Practices Act in North Carolina, and TikTok and ByteDance should be forced to pay a price for that. It is a case that has continued now with Josh Stein moving on to the governor's office and Jeff Jackson moving into the Attorney General's office. Jackson and his lawyers are continuing to defend the lawsuit. And the latest development, the reason that we're talking about it, is that a state business court judge, Adam Conrad, just issued an order that dismissed or rejected the motions that TikTok filed to dismiss the case. TikTok basically made a number of arguments. One of them is that this is not something that belongs in state court. They also said that federal law immunizes TikTok against any state lawsuit. They also made a First Amendment argument. And they said that basically the state did not put forward a claim that can be addressed in a court. It's the failure to state a claim argument. And basically Conrad, in his order that came out this week, shot down all of those arguments and said, no, this lawsuit can move forward.
Mitch, this is taking place in the North Carolina Business Court. We've discussed a couple of stories out of the business court. I'll be the first to admit, not that many. What makes the business court different from the variety of other legal challenges that you've brought us up to speed on here over the last couple of months?
It's an important point because business court operates like Superior Court, which is the main trial court level of North Carolina. You have district court, but district court deals with the smaller cases. Superior Court is the main trial court where you deal with crimes or civil suits of most types. The difference between a typical Superior Court and business court is it's designed to deal with complex litigation that has something to do with businesses. So almost anything that's going to have a business aspect to it, one party or another might want to have the case heard in business court. And that's what happened here. We're talking about a really complicated case dealing with a major business. And so the idea of having it in the specialized business court rather than in just the general Wake County or Mecklenburg County or New Hanover County Superior Court, it made sense for this case to be put there. And generally, a case gets to business court because one or both of the parties ask for it to be in business court, and then the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court signs off on it. So that's why a case gets to business court. That's why these specialized business court judges deal with cases that only deal with businesses rather than having to do business case one day and then a murder or a robbery the next day or something like that. That's why business court is of interest here.
Yeah, and of course you talk about some of those very unique complexities that do come up when you're talking about something like, in this case, a multinational corporation in ByteDance operating this very popular social media app. Mitch, this has been an ongoing, lengthy lawsuit, and I feel like some of what's being discussed here in North Carolina could end up being superseded by some of those movements at the national level. Well, that also, I would assume, adds to the probably interesting nature of this case.
Yeah, it certainly could be superseded by what happens nationally, especially if ByteDance and TikTok eventually are banned. I mean, if that happens, then probably much of this suit, if not all of it, becomes moot, unless the state continues to push forward and saying, even though you aren't allowed to operate, you still put forward this addictive application and caused all kinds of problems in North Carolina, and you should have to pay for it. That potentially could go forward, but certainly it would have much less steam if TikTok is forced to shut down. If TikTok is allowed to continue to operate, then this case certainly has legs, because the idea is not on the state level trying to shut down TikTok or say you can't operate in North Carolina. It's just saying, look, the way that you're operating is violating our state law, and you're going to have to pay a price for it. So even if TikTok wins at the national level, the fact that this case continues to move forward in North Carolina in the business court means that its legal woes won't be over. Now, one thing that might be interesting to see is, depending on what happens in the business court and as it moves forward, because right now, all that has happened is that the case continues to move forward closer and closer to a trial and some sort of resolution. The only thing that happened at this point is that the judge has said, no, I'm not going to dismiss the case. That doesn't mean an ultimate win for the state. It just means the state can press forward with its case. Now, depending on the outcome of the case, it's something that TikTok or ByteDance might try to move from state court to federal court, saying, look, federal court, tell the states they can't mess with us. But that remains to be seen. Right now, the major point is that TikTok tried to get this case thrown out of state court, and the state court judge said, no, it's going to move forward.
We'll continue to track the progress on that legal proceeding here in North Carolina, and of course, keep our eye on some of those potential movements at the national level as well. We appreciate the update this morning. Mitch Kokai joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:49, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll get another look at the roadways on your Thursday commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. And
Station.
It It's 5:53. Good morning again. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. Continuing our track of Hurricane Erin this morning. The news as you're just waking up and getting your day started. That storm is now officially beginning its process of moving east. Added the 5 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, Erin moving north-northeast at 17 miles an hour. It does continue to be a Category 2 hurricane with its winds at 105 miles an hour. For those keeping track at home, Category 2 storms are between 96 and 110 miles an hour. Once it falls to a 95 miles an hour and below, it will be a Category 1 storm as it is expected to weaken as it moves away from the United States. Impacts being felt right now in the Outer Banks area of our state. Some tropical storms, showers and storms moving onshore this morning. Some very high waves being reported by some buoys just off the shore of Cape Hatteras this morning. 18-foot waves being reported by a couple of those buoys with some winds in the mid-40s, wind gusts in the mid-40s to low 50s as that storm is making its closest pass. It's about 200 miles directly east of Cape Hatteras this morning as it begins its trek away. A state of emergency is in effect for North Carolina, as we heard in a press conference yesterday from Governor Josh Stein and Will Ray, the head of emergency management. Crews are staged and ready to go to deal with any potential impacts, which again are expected to be relatively minimal outside of the rip current risk and some of the high surf. High tide is expected throughout portions of the Outer Banks in the next 30 minutes or so as daybreak continues. So we'll probably watch that and see that unfold live throughout all of the various pier and beach cameras that exist throughout the Outer Banks this morning. Highway 12, which has been a large portion of discussion throughout the week. Highway 12 in certain areas were closed last night. The highway was closed around 7 p.m., according to the Department of Transportation. That was due to water rushing over the road. I would imagine some similar conditions are continuing this morning with that. Will Ray, the head of the North Carolina Department of Emergency Management, had this to say about the storm at a press conference yesterday.
Extremely large, dangerous waves forecasted around 20 feet in height, along with storm surge of 2 to 4 feet on top of the surf, will likely impact the dunes along portions of the North Carolina coast, especially east and southeast facing beaches and the Outer Banks. Numerous roadways will likely become impassable, especially on Highway 12, as the governor mentioned, and in communities on the barrier islands. This will be a longer duration event, with coastal flooding expected over several high tide cycles. We will see rain bands trailing Erin that will also impact the area, already saturated soils across the area, which could lead to extended impacts. Please be sure to have multiple ways to receive weather alerts, especially during the overnight hours. You need to be informed by receiving information from reputable sources of information and have a plan to protect yourself and your family.
The conditions are expected to, and they already are deteriorating in some areas. They will improve throughout the day today. You can get more details on this state of emergency press briefing that took place at the Emergency Operations Center yesterday over on our website this morning at carolinajournal.com. Well, that's going to do it for a Thursday edition. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.